Alright, welcome to part 2 of my video on the e153 transaxle as used in the 93 MR2 turbo. Part 1 was basically disassembly, a little bit of inspection in there. I have skipped the how to install new bearing races and that kind of stuff, but I am going to show you how to do the preload, which is probably one of the most important parts when you're getting this stuff back together. Obviously the clearances on the input shaft and output shaft matter a whole lot. Whether your synchros are in good condition and so forth. I think the BGB factory service manual is actually really great. It's got a lot of good procedures in there. Really, if you just follow all that stuff, you should be fine. That's what I did. But I thought that the preload part was a little confusing, the way that they showed a few of the things. Also, there's no information other than the SST number for that torque wrench on where to get it. So I'm going to talk about that as well. Let's go ahead and get started here. So first of all, I've already adjusted all of my preloads, so really I'll just talk about how to do it and stuff, but how to measure it and so forth and what I did. So the differentials I put in here is a Quaife QDF17E. It's a locking differential. It's actually a torque biasing. There's no actual locking that goes on in here, but it's really important, you're going to install an $1,100 differential that you get the preload right on the bearings, or, really bad things can happen, and that's not cool, right? So I've also noticed that seems to be left out a lot in a lot of talks about rebuilding transmissions or even installing differentials. Like, here's how to install your LSD. Nobody really talks about that preload. So what you need to do this is a Tonichi torque wrench. You could probably find it from another manufacturer. This is going to run you about $120. If you can find one, more power to you. I couldn't find one, anybody that I knew. So it measures up to, so this guy goes up to about 17 inch-pounds. Right, it starts off at 2 inch-pounds and goes to 17. Although you can get a fairly accurate reading, really, in the one. They just don't. You can see there, they just don't have little marks for it. On the one, it starts at 2. So, anyway, I found this guy on Amazon. It was actually shipped direct from Tonichi, and that model number. As you can see, very Japanese. Model on this is a 15SF-A. A is for American readings, otherwise you get it in like kilogram centimeters, which is kind of a pain in the ass to figure out, although the BGB does have those listed anyway. So anyway, you will need this wrench, or something that measures something down that's sensitive. The 0 to 30 wrenches, those are crap. That will not do it. Any click style torque wrench will not do it. You need to have one that's actually this beam style measurement, because what we're going to do is measure the torque that it actually starts at, what they call starting torque. How much pressure do I need to put on this until it starts moving? All right, that's crucial here. So what you're going to do is essentially a big pain in the ass procedure. Take this guy out real quick. And you can see in here I have the bearings installed. I have no seals or baffles or anything like that. What I'd have to do is take this case apart, tap out the, tap is kind of a general word, tap out this shim and the bearing outer race, and then you're going to end up selecting bigger shims as you need to actually get the proper torque. And it's all listed in the BGB as far as, what shim thickness is going to give you what torque and stuff like that. So, without further ado, now the way I did this, the way they show you is to actually put in the output shaft, measure the output shaft preload, and then put in the differential, and then essentially subtract it. They don't tell you that. It says add output shaft preload, which sounds a little confusing, but that's really what we're talking about. That to me is not really very accurate, because you're adding in there the actual meshing of teeth and stuff like that, so not really talking about the actual bearing preload at all. Interestingly enough, and it could be just because of the nature of the beast and expansion of metals and so forth, the differential preload is actually a lot less than the output shaft. Output shaft, you're talking up to 16 inch-pounds of preload on that for new bearings, and about 3.6 for the new bearings on a differential. So what I've done here is I actually took my old stub axle You see I had to get the LSD stub axle to go with the Quaif. So I took my old stub axle, drilled a little bit of a hole out in here in the middle, and just ran a M6x1 tap into that and put a little 10mm headed M6 bolt in there. Kind of cheating, I know. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and grab a 10mm socket here and just put him over here on this guy, slap on my Tonichi, and we're looking for no more than about 3.6. This is going to be difficult to show you. I'll try to zoom in here. If it's going to focus at all, I don't know. Come on, little camera, you can do it. Maybe you can't. Well, anyway, you get the idea. So I'm going to push on this slowly. There we go. Oh, it's not wanting to move today. Let me wiggle this back and forth a little bit, make sure it's set. Also, one thing to take into consideration is that you will have a little RTV on the flange. Yeah, not much, but it will actually take back a little bit of the torque. It's about 3 right there. 3.5. See, so at that point where it's at, right as it starts to move. I also go the other way. Well, I would go the other way, actually. It's going to unscrew it. So that's where we're at. I've measured this a bunch before, and the average, it's anywhere from like 2.5 to 3.5. Usually not a 5. These are new bearings, so they'll bed in, everything's going to get adjusted. I'm not worried about that. So again, 3.6 is my max on there, so you know, on average that's what I'm getting. These aren't oiled, you know, again, it's never run, so this feels pretty good. I mean, it's not hard to move. Of course, you know, some people that say that they do it by hand, that scares the crap out of me because of, you see how sensitive that is and such a low measurement, so do use a tool. Alright, so the next one here is going to be output shaft preload, so let me get that set up real quick and we'll be back in a second. Alright, go ahead and get my transmission case off. I've had this thing on and off so many times doing the preload that it comes off a little easier than some might. So I just set this aside here. Alright, there you can see differential, ring gear, new bearings, the inside of the transmission. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting some stuff back together since I am actually doing the reassembly on this. But I'll just talk about, you know, how that output shaft preload is done. It's essentially exactly the same as we did our differential preload. We're just going to put the nut, our new nut, on the end of our output shaft right there. And with that little torque wrench and this gigantic socket you're going to need to get a 1/2 inch drive to 3/8 drive and the 3/8 to 1/4 inch drive adapter. I actually got the whole set of these and some more as well in my box. They're impact too for like $7. I found them on Amazon. So you can get that adapter set that'll allow you to put that little tiny torque wrench on this massive socket. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do here actually for the reassembly is I need to put my magnet back in. My magnet was pretty nasty and it's not fun cleaning all the crap off these magnets because, well, it's a magnet and steel likes to stay on magnets. So that guy back in there. Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I replaced so many bearings. I did the input shaft bearing, the large roller bearing on the input shaft, which had just essentially fallen off. I pulled it right off the shaft. Didn't require any pressing or any tools or anything, which is really ridiculous. Alright, now it's time to install the oil pump. Just go ahead and grab my oil pump here. It's important not to drop this. It's kind of fragile inside. You can score it up and just make sure that the rotor is aligned here. Just get that guy right there lined up. Alright, now we got 4 bolts. First 2 are going to go in my oil pump. I'm actually just going to put a little blue Loctite on these guys. Oil pipe. This guy's going to go down into this hole over here. And also, I get it both of them at the same time, so this hole down here and that hole over here. Alright, and these other 2 bolts go into these holes. Oops. My torque wrench. It's awkward holding all this at the same time. Nice FedEx cameraman. You can check that. Alright. The cap on our Loctite. Okay, so next I need to install my differential. I've already have a decent coating of moly assembly lube, or whatever kind of multi-purpose grease you want to use should be okay. We'll go ahead and gently drop him in there. Next, oil pump drive gear. This guy's going to go in that funky looking hole. Little octagonal hole down there inside the oil pump. Right there like that. They get it lined up first. There we go. He just hangs out right there. Alright, so now next step is our output shaft. Alright, in order to install our output shaft, I'm going to have to move the differential out of the way just a little bit. Essentially just kind of pick it up, tilt it a little. We're just going to sneak that bearing past him. Like that. And our output shaft is in. It's starting to look more and more like a transmission. Okay. Now I've already done all of our preload, but I'm going to show you after I get to that point. After I actually get to the point where I put that case half back on there, I'm going to show you what it's going to be like if you're setting your output shaft preload. Okay, here we've got the input shaft sitting up on a set of V-blocks here just to protect it while it's hanging out on my workbench. Got a new rear bearing, roller radial bearing. I got a new race and new needle bearings, new roller bearings rather, in my case front half there. Got all new synchronizers. Got a new, it comes with the sleeve for the synchros. All the bearings in here were good, surprisingly. And all the tolerances and everything on the shaft are good. So got the new seal and bearings in the case half, and this is now time to put this guy in there. So going to zoom in a little bit. All right. Okay. So I got my clutch side bearing, also known as the front bearing, with some multi-purpose grease on it. Now, what I'm going to need to do, I'm going to need to tilt the output shaft and then mate them together just like that. Alright, now the first thing that we're going to do after getting our differential, our output, and our input shafts back in is we're going to install the shift forks. Now, I flipped the transmission around. We're looking at the top side of it, so that way you can see all the detail of the shift fork area. Otherwise, the bottom you wouldn't see it. So, this is called the number 2 shift fork. Notice the thicker side, that's going to get installed towards the differential side of the transmission. These are now made out of steel because the old ones had a real bad problem breaking in half, which kept you from going into first, second gear. So, taking this guy, putting him up here, and I'm going to align his hole with the hole that's closest to the output shaft. Then my number 1, I got to wait just a second for that because I got to get my reverse shift fork in here. So this guy has this little reverse lever right here, little selector lever. And you can see that in a second how that's going to activate it, the reverse. But I just want to make sure that this piece of it right here faces outwards towards the camera here, and then this guy is kind of facing that way. All right. So this is going to drop down into the hole that would be closest to me, and there's the hole in the lever is going to align with the second hole over that's closest to the top of the transmission. All right. Go ahead and get that in there. Roughly line things up here. Now next we're going to need to install the number 1 shift fork, this guy. You see there's 2 holes in it, so we want to make sure that this hole is facing the front side of the transmission, or the right hand side if you want to look at it that way from where we're looking at it. This guy just goes right on that here. I'm going to line these holes up with this. Now that one hole is going to align with our number 2 fork, and the other hole is going to align with that hole that where, if you can see here, let me grab this. This is much better. So we see this guy. You can see down through this one into this second number 1 shift fork here. All right, and then also the hole in number 1 is lined up with the hole for our reverse lever right there, and there's a hole underneath that if you can't see it. Alright, now I gotta install the shift forks. So I got my number 2 in here, and I got my reverse in. I have my number 1 in there, and I also need that number 1 shift head in here, so bolt hole faces towards the differential, goes over the inside hole on the number 1 fork. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is take the smooth shaft that has nothing on it. Ta-da, smooth shaft. Okay. In this case, snap ring will be on the top, obviously. It has to go through this hole, these holes. So I'll go through my number 2, through that number 1 shift head, through the hole in the number 1 shift fork, a little jiggle, and then it's going to go down through there. At this point you want to line it up and get these Get these bolts, put a little Loctite on it. Doesn't call for it, but a little glue is always good insurance. Okay, I'm locked down my number 2. My number 1 shift head. Torque them down. Alright, now the last thing, this is kind of a bit of a pain in the ass, is you have to install the interlock roller. Interlock roller is this little piece of metal. Hopefully you didn't lose it. I didn't. If I didn't lose it, you shouldn't lose it. Because believe me, I lose shit. Now he is now clean. Where's my lens? A low lens. That's this little guy. Looks almost like a needle from a roller bearing. So, now they say install it with a middle finger. Is there any other way to install it? Alright, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the metal finger. Sounds so much like middle finger, doesn't it? I'm going to put it on the little roller. I'm going to dip him down in there if I can. And I can't. Okay, so this works out fine. So because of that, I can stick him in the hole gently. Put the magnet through the top so he doesn't fall down into Never Never Land. And should be able to push it straight through with the straw. If my magnetic finger doesn't grab it and pull it out first, which it did. Oh, that was the sound of me failing. Middle finger is now going into the hole to retrieve said interlock roller. Alright, so I'm going to struggle with this and be back in a minute. Alright, for whatever reason my little interlock roller was stuck, so I just popped up number 4 and wiggled out the thing and popped it out and got it back in. It was free. I don't see what it was stuck on, but I cleaned it up and put it back in and now it's good. Actually installed the interlock roller before I put the shaft in this time, which was really friggin' easy. I don't know why they tell you to use a little metal finger or whatever, magnetic finger. It's kind of pointless. So that's my tip there. I would install that interlock roller before you ever get it to that point. Save yourself the trouble. Maybe put a little dab of grease on it or something like that so it doesn't come out. Alright, so then here's the fun part. Fun part here is I gotta install this last shaft, but it's not gonna clear because the interlock roller is there, so you just wanna drop this down in there, get it lined up and everything. And then you're going to have to raise this guy until it hits the notch. See that? And then it just drops right in. And then you can get them all aligned. Voila. Kind of a bitch, but not too bad. Alright, next up, you want to get all of the lock screws nice and clean. Slap a little blue thread lock around there for insurance. You definitely don't want a bolt coming off inside your transmission, and you sure as hell don't want it to be on your shifts, because then you lose a gear and you have to take it apart anyway. Blows. So I'll just a little too much there and share it with this guy. Alright. So first gotta find the hole. Alright. Thank you. Oh, hi, Milton. My dog. Oh, and the last one was for number 5, so I can thread lock off that. Duh. Never said I was perfect. Torque that one down. 17 Newton meters. Okay, now I got my shifters done. Next step now is to install the balls with their plugs and springs. Okay, next we're going to install the balls, springs, and the little rods that hold the shifters in position. Give it a nice solid position-y feel. Besides from obviously the shift drums and shift forks themselves. Alright, so we got 2. You want to have them so there's the open hole there. 2 balls. I got 2 balls in my hands. And I'm just going to go ahead and roll a ball in there. Make sure it doesn't fall out. Still got a little cylinder in behind it. And you can feel how that's going to hold it. Just like that. Go ahead and install those set bolts now. You might think that they had some sort of O-ring on there, but they really don't. It's just Loctite 242 or 3-bond 13 or 1433 or whatever. It's actually just blue Loctite. So make sure those plug threads are nice and clean. Put your ball in the little hole right here. So you got ball and our little follower thingy. And make sure that you can see the spring. That side goes on the ball, so the ball can recess in there. Put those in your hole. Yes, no puns, please. And go ahead and put these in there. Yeah, just these first 2. The last one will go in after we get all of our reverse stuff set up. I'm not quite ready for that. Loctite the other one. And get those threads nice and wet because they're actually going to seal in some oil too. Again, these are going to get torqued down to 25 Newton meters per VGB. Alright, so your second oil tube, this crazy looking dude here, make sure that you change out the seal. The seal's kind of hidden in here. Just get a little pick and pull it out. It's actually pretty good looking. Already ran a bunch of parts washer fluid through here. So I got the new seal from the kit. You just push him in there. It's definitely a little plumper than the original, so it's that. Alright, now we're going to install the reverse idler gear in the number 2 oil pipe. I'll spin this around. You can see it. And I'll zoom it in because I'm a mile away. Okay, now this is a reverse idler gear, and the top of it has a hole, and that hole has to line up with the case because there's a bolt that holds this guy from moving. Very critical. So if you see on here, ooh, it's dirty. Oh, I missed that when I was cleaning. So if you see on the top of this guy, there's a match mark. See that little notch right here? That has to line up with the case. Yeah, so I'm going to get a little MP grease. Just some Molly assembly lube. It's a Lubriplate number 105. It's great for this kind of stuff. It's kind of like butter, like liquid butter. Make stuff work like a butter. So just get that on there. Get on the butter up that shaft. Yeah. Nicely buttered shaft. Alright, anyway, we're just gonna make sure that this gear is up, which it kind of is because I'm holding it. This is just gonna drop into this hole. Just gonna finagle it in there. This shaft should push down. Should. Is already in. It only goes down a half an inch. Okay. Cool. And then you'll find that there is supposedly a match mark on the case. But you could beat the shit out of me where it is. So just follow where it shows in the book, I guess. I'll get that sorted in a minute. I'll have to refer to the guide. We're going to install our number 2 oil pipe now. This guy's going to go in right around here. It's going to go down in this hole right here where the oil pump comes out. There's no seal in there. Nope. Like so. Well, need the reverse shift fork in there first. Reverse shift lever. This is our reverse shift lever. Go right in here where those 2 holes are, and then this lever from the shifter will go into the back side of that. Line that up, and this number 2 oil pipe is going to sit on top of him. Just like that. So there's our number 2 oil pipe. We replaced this seal. Just sits in there on top of the oil pump. It's going to wrap around, sit on top of our reverse shifter lever right there. Make sure that this ends up in its home, which is in this little ring on the reverse idler. And also make sure right here that the pin that comes over from our reverse. Okay, so now all of my shift forks, everything's installed, my reverse is installed, my number 2 oil pipe, all that good stuff. It's time to put on our form in place gasket. So RTV you want to put on about a millimeter wide. So the one thing you'll notice right here, if I can focus on here, one thing you'll notice right here is there's no ridge here for the snap ring. So I'm going to have to pull this up just a little bit, and then I have a ridge. This guy is going to be what holds down our outer race for our output shaft and also keeps this guy from going this way. Alright viewers, I told you that I would show you how to set the preload for the output shaft. Essentially just put the thing on here, do it just like I showed you on the differential. I have it all together now, so I'm going to show you where it's at. So just under 13. For these things you want to turn it a couple times and bed it